it's a means of accessing what a culture thinks a human being is, right? Which is what I was saying before about modernity and realism, that a human body is wretched, versus idealism in classical art, that the human body is, emblematic of an inner beauty.
Welcome to Classical Etc. You're in the studio with Memoria Press.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Classical Etc. I'm Jessica Aboud, and I'm here with Paul, Tanya, and Mr. Kyle Janke. Kyle, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. You teach literature and art at our high school, Highlands Latin School here in Spring Meadows, and you also teach literature at Memoria College.
Yes.
You're speaking at the conference this year?
Yes.
What's your topic?
I'm doing a couple of talks,
Okay.
Both on literature.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And you're doing your book study. Your book group is on Hamlet?
Yes.
This
year's
Midsummer
Night's
Night's Dream.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll be so fun. I did Moby Dick with you last year and then never made it in there to actually participate.
remember that.
But I'm glad I read Moby Dick.
Good. Yeah.
Yes.
Glad you did too.
I did. I read it just for that and then never walked in the door for the whole day. But I am very glad I read it.
Oh.
I was shocked how many people. I thought nobody would come for Moby Dick.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No,
Packed.
I was surprised too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they came back after lunch.
Right.
That's always.
Funny. Well, Kyle, we're glad to have you here to talk about a topic that you've written and so thoughtfully about. We're going to talk about art. But before we get to that, what's everybody been reading? Summer is here.
So
Any good reads?
This weekend, I was going to be working with my hands as I do most weekends, and I figured I needed to listen to something.
Mm-hmm.
So I pull up my Audible account, and I found I had this book in there called The Burnout Generation, and I thought that'd be interesting. It was awful. It was awful.
So modern day, like
It was. Yeah. It was a millennial asking why she experienced burnout, and then also talking to other people. It was billed as a book, but it was almost more like a 4-part podcast episodes, I guess. And it was just people opining about how hard their life was. And then you get to the end and she's like, I don't have any solutions for you, but actually thinking about burnout has really helped me be less burned out. And I was like, what world am I living in?
She just needed a therapist.
Well, and that was the one thing she said. The one thing everybody says helps them is a therapist. I was like, this could have been a very different book.
right, or a tweet. That could have been a tweet.
I wonder how much farm work might actually help with that.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, just being out there, being outside. Now I got sunburned yesterday.
It was hot.
It was hot. So.
Oh. Kyle, what's on your nightstand?
Yeah, so I've been reading two things. I've been reading Malcolm Guite's Galahad ballad, and that's beautiful. I've been enjoying that. I've been taking that one really slowly on purpose. But I just finished reading again Marilyn Robinson's Lila. It's the third book in her series.
Do you like her?
I do. Yeah, I think Gilead, the first book in that series, is a masterpiece. And Lila is just a beautiful book.
I agree. Not everybody at this table does.
Oh, you don't like Marilyn Robinson?
Oh,
Gilead is like a classic.
Gonna keep my mouth shut.
Aw.
But we tried to read it in book club, other
we
people
read
did,
it
and
in
I
book
tried,
club.
and I failed. I
He
can't
failed with
get into it.
Lila.
yeah.
Have you read Gilead?
I don't know. After
love
that,
them
I was
all.
like, I just can't. I mean, I could, but do I really want to spend my time doing something that? Yeah, I don't know.
That's the
said you listened
audiobook you
to-
should have had this
Yeah.
weekend.
That's right.
It would have been
Yeah.
great with your farm chores.
It would have.
That's. I wonder if I need to listen to it rather than sit down and read it. It was a slog to read.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But
Well,
it's
Tanya?
so lovely.
What are you reading?
Well, I finished this weekend, yesterday morning, I think. This is Happiness by Niall Williams.
Oh,
And I know I was really iffy about it. I'm still a little iffy. Have you ever read Niall Williams? Well, it's Irish, and there are some brilliant moments in it. I'm really glad that I read it, but I can't say that I overwhelmingly loved his writing style. I felt like it needed to be less meandering, maybe. But he kept saying, he was writing as an old man, just looking back at his memories. So it was true to that. It was true to that. So I guess that's a success. But it does have these brilliant, and the whole title of the thing has really made a difference in me, in the recognition that he basically says at one point, you finally get to the title of the book where he talks about how happiness, this is happiness, and it's just it could be in this moment right now, that most of our moments are moments of happiness. And we just have to recognize that. And I've really caught myself thinking, just at random times during the day, this is happiness. And just, making you kind of analyze maybe better what we get so caught up. I do, especially because I'm very, structured, task-driven, tunnel-visioned. And so it's good for me.
Be a little reflective.
That funny?
I'm gonna put that in my back pocket, and the next time we're having a conversation, I'm just gonna remind you that this is happiness.
This is happiness.
Yeah,
it's gonna be your summer motto.
This is happiness.
I just finished Fountains of Silence by Ruta Zapetis. It was big, so it took me a while. Have you ever read a book that you come away thinking that was just plot soup? Like there was a lot in there. It was set in Madrid in the 50s. So you've got a fascist dictator, corruption in the church, corrupt law enforcement. There was a bit of a thread of romance, an orphanage, a journalist. I'm leaving so many things out. Matadors. That was another. There was just so much in there. It was good.
Like an epic.
But it was just everything was in there and then swirled around.
Did it make sense though?
It did, although each one of those items that I mentioned was one character's thread of their story. So it constantly was moving back between the matador, the nun, the Spanish woman who was like lower class. So there was all kinds of different stories being told in tandem, but there was just a lot going on. But it was interesting.
And you finished it.
I did.
That says something for me when you finish a book.
Yeah, and it was big. Well, yeah. Oh, I finished the Odyssey too. I did finish that.
She recommends books to me all the time, and then she says, "Now I haven't finished it, and I'm probably not going to." But I think you'd really like it.
Yeah, I liked the setting of the book. I think that's what got me through. It was epic. Good word for it. Well, let's tackle a listener question. This came to the inbox recently. This is from Kelsey. She wrote us at podcast@memoriapress.com. So please write us if you have a question. She says, "Hello, my question is, are crafts really necessary for the early school years, pre-K through second grade? Some background. We have 5 kids, ages 5 and under. While we've really enjoyed the MP curriculum with our oldest and plan to continue using it with our other students, for now, crafts are very taxing and don't appear to be adding much value to our school day. I wonder if there's a compelling educational or developmental reason why we should persevere with the curriculum-themed crafts as part of our school week. Thanks, Kelsey." So what's our counsel to Kelsey? Should she keep going?
I hated crafts. I did them with my little kids, but I was not good at it. It made a huge mess. And nothing ever really came out like it was supposed to. They did do crafts in Bible school, so they always brought home nice little crafts, but I was just a failure at it. And I did try. Because I was like Kelsey, I thought, I need to do crafts because it's an important thing. But it didn't. My doing crafts with my kids didn't teach them anything. It was just and we still have little Christmas ornaments we made when they were little. And every year when we pull them out, it's just, everybody just laughs because they're just pitiful.
Maybe that's part of it.
Well, maybe so. They did go to an art class for a year where they made some really cool things. But crafts at home for me just did not work. If I had to do it again, probably not.
I would just say that sometimes that's where memories are made. And sometimes, so I would say I wouldn't be slavish to it, but I think there are things that the child's learning through the process, but I don't know that you have to do one a week. You know?
Yeah.
And
It's a lot of popsicle sticks and macaroni, and I don't even know what
that's kind of, tissue paper. Do you all do crafts at home?
We do crafts. I don't know, for the sake of education, we do crafts because, I've got my second oldest. He's really crafty. He loves to, color, like nice coloring, and he loves to do origami. That's his big thing.
Oh, yeah.
Which I love.
Those
I think
are real.
It's great. Yeah. He
Those
makes
are
little
real
gifts
things.
for his friends at school and stuff like that. But I don't know. I feel like the question is that, the educational value of the craft.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great thing in a household.
Mm-hmm.
But
and I think that's why, Tanya's the curriculum director. She could speak to this, but I think it's in the curriculum because if somebody's not doing, like if the kids don't have an opportunity to go grab construction paper and build with it, do what they want with it, outside of what they're learning in their school day, then it should be in their school day. Right?
Well, and my kids loved it. They loved doing it. I'm the one that was the failure at it, but they did enjoy it. It does make them feel like you're doing something that's for school, but not really school.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if the kids like it, why not? It doesn't have to be perfect. Nobody ever has to see it but you. But if you've got a child who is naturally drawn to drawing or painting or even craftiness. I had boys, they were not into that, building little Christmas ornaments. That just wasn't their thing. But I do think it's good to encourage creativity in art. I just don't think it has to be in our little craft books that tie pasting seeds onto a paper plate. That kind of craft is the kind that is in our craft books, which kids love to do. It feels like they're doing school and actually, not having to read. I don't know. I don't know.
I will say that one of sort of my bigger regrets is that I wasn't trained better in drawing as a child. And so like if you as the teacher don't have that ability and you're not giving your children an ability to learn past you, like your kids later on may go like, Mom, I wish I'd learned this. So I don't say that to put a burden on every parent of like, you need to, do this. But I think it's something worth thinking about, that maybe you do it more than you are comfortable with, but maybe not as much as the curriculum demands and try to stretch a little bit. Because that's what education is about. It's about stretching.
Well, the interesting thing is that my kids love to watch Bob Ross on PBS. They would just sit there and watch him paint all day long when they weren't watching Mr. Rogers. It was really odd to me because neither one of them really expressed any interest in a lot of drawing or painting or anything like that. I would have encouraged it if they had. But maybe they would have if I'd been able to teach them how to draw. But Bob Ross did.
Yeah, but you got to actually do. You can't just watch.
Right. Right. Well, Kelsey, we hope that's helpful to you.
I don't know that was helpful.
I don't either, but that's funny. Oh, thanks for bearing with, Kelsey. On to today's discussion. Today we are tackling a topic that often makes teachers and parents a bit nervous: how to approach nudity in art, specifically with high schoolers. Kyle, you wrote a wonderful preface in your textbook, Classical History of Art, and you wrote about what should we do with nudity in art for students.
Can I just say for just a minute how that happened?
Sure.
So Kyle kept giving me images to make art cards for his classical art program which is we are marketing to 11th, 12th grade. And I kept giving them back to him and saying, these have too much nudity in them, take it out. And so then he would give me different nudity instead of actually hearing me say no nudity. And finally, he wrote me a defense of nudity in art, which then became the preface of the book, because he had to convince me.
And what did you say?
What did I say in my defense of nudity? I should see if I can find that again. Yeah.
I have it. But
yeah, I mean, so to my mind, just to respond to that, there's a different, there's nudity and then there's nudity. The intention matters a great deal. And in putting together the curriculum, and in the way I teach my class, there's a whole host of paintings that I have eliminated from my instruction just because I feel like they cross some sort of line that, you know, this painting, you know, feels like it was painted for a bachelor French aristocrat in the late 1700s. Like that, we don't need to study that one.
So even not just in modern art, but this is earlier.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, I mean, going back to ancient times, there's inappropriate nudity, you know, all over the place. But that can be distinguished between nudity that is in art that is well-intentioned. And so I think the idea comes down to, you know, how do you make that distinction? And then also why even go there? Why is this necessary? Yeah. So I think one of the things I say in the preface, which you called a wonderful preface, and thank you for that, appreciate that, is just the idea that I think beauty is the thing that is most easily left behind. It's the transcendental that's most easily ignored. I think just because people often don't know what to do with beauty, and is that a thing that can really be taught? Yes, it is. And, you know, good taste is a thing that can actually be taught, but that it's, people don't really know what to do with that. Whereas goodness and truth, perhaps are a little bit more self-evident, or people feel like they have more of a handle on that. And so we're goodness and truth heavy, which is good. I mean, these are the paths that lead to life and lead to thriving, you know. But I think beauty is really the thing that, and this is what I say in the preface, beauty is really the thing that causes us to follow, that makes us follow. Because it awakens our desires, right? Our appropriate desires. So that's, you know, the way I would think about it. And just to give kind of a summary of my position on it, great art, I think, both attracts and directs our attention. And that's the important step. It's directing our attention towards something. Classically, our passions, our desires have been compared to a chariot driven by reason. There does need to be a destination, though. There needs to be some understanding of where we're trying to go and what we're trying to get to, which I would say beauty does a lot to you know, answer those questions or to give some object of our pursuit. And then, but what about nudity? You know, nudity then engages, I think, very directly with what that right thing is. What is the right thing to pursue versus what is the wrong thing to pursue? And it's asking a question that's really, nudity is asking a question that's really fundamental, which is what's beautiful about another person, right? And not just another person that you might fall in love with. And we're not talking romantically. What's beautiful about another person in a society, right? Why should we acknowledge and notice and be aware of the other person? It's actually interesting. I was just thinking, on my way here, on my walk up to do this podcast, the art periods in history that treat the body as a body, right? So realism that get to just the physical nature of the human body, tend to drift away from nudity unless it's ugly and wretched and broken, right? So you get, you know, revolutionary paintings in the late 1700s where you've got like stripped corpses in the foreground, right? So, you know, the broken human body. It's exactly the societies that do beautiful nudes in art that have a spiritual understanding of the human being, that are looking like that beauty is tapping into something that is internal, not external. So we're not really even thinking about the body. The body is an
image of what's happening inside.
Yeah, an image, a vessel, a symbol of an inner reality, an inner humanity.
I wanted to get to when that sort of distinction of the nude drawing out something that's within.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, you said that there are some works that are appropriate and some works that aren't.
Mm-hmm.
Can we just give a couple examples of that?
Like examples of the artworks that are.
Yeah, for like the Birth of Venus. What category are you putting that in?
Yeah, that is work up to it. Because honestly, it's on a borderline where, I mean, Botticelli's intentions are, I believe, I am convinced, above board fully, but it challenges that, right?
Okay.
So I do think there's also a level of nudity that you work up to. I actually, with my students, I always give them sort of a heads up of when we're actually going to get into nude art at all. Which is 3 weeks into the course. And I tell them that, on day one, like, hey, just so we know, we're going to get there in 3 weeks. If there are any problems, you want to have a conversation, your parents want to have a conversation with me, which in how many years have I been doing it? It's never happened. No one's ever sought me out for that conversation.
And they're around 11th, 12th grade. Just kind of
these
putting
are 12th graders.
Okay.
Yeah.
12th graders.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Birth of Venus, it pushes that boundary. It's one work that I had to have kind of a mental conversation and think about with including it, because there are other very fine Botticelli paintings. Like, you can cover the artist without doing that work. Although the reintroduction of Greek styles into the Renaissance art, that painting in particular is kind of one of the best examples of that. So yeah, I mean, there are reasons to include it. There's I'm probably going to say the name wrong because he's French, and I'm sorry, but Boucher, Boucher. So he's an artist in the late 1700s, and he's the one I'm kind of thinking of mentally when I say these are painted for bachelor aristocrats. These are, tantalizing. They're meant to be. They don't need to be in an art curriculum because they don't offer anything to the conversation. Yeah. So if that's,
I think that's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So, and is that when you say work up to it, that's even with older students. That's not from fourth grade on like a progressive. Okay. Got it. It's even with older students. I think we would probably get that question. Probably people ask like, okay, I'm on board with you, but at what point do I start?
Yeah. Yeah. Because there needs to be some understanding of what this is grounded in. So I think of now when I say work up to it, I'm thinking within a course, like a year's course in art. Because I think of a course as a conversation. You're drawing students into a particular conversation in any course that you teach. So you're building up in that conversation. You're laying the groundwork. And I should plug a book here. All of my, when I say groundwork, the foundation of what I think about nudity in art comes from a book by Kenneth Clark called The Nude, where he treats nudity in art as a form of art. It's an art form. So it's not a subject that a painter can, I'll paint a vase of flowers and I'll paint a nude. He treats nudity in art as a form of art itself, which I take him to mean by that. It's a means of accessing what a culture thinks a human being is, right? Which is what I was saying before about modernity and realism, that a human body is wretched, versus idealism in classical art, that the human body is, emblematic of an inner beauty. So yeah, to means of accessing what a culture thinks a human being is. It's sort of, humanity unaccommodated. What is a person? Okay. And laying that groundwork and getting students to understand that is what we're talking about. What is a human being? Then when they're confronted with the nudity in the art, their minds have somewhere to go with it, right? That they have some certain conversation that this image is a part of, which I think is really important.
Is that in your book so that other people can teach that? Or did you talk about it in your videos?
I don't know if I talked about it directly. It's addressed kind of rather briefly in the preface, just how to place nudity in our understanding of what is it for? Why is this a part of the course? But then I think the way the course is put together, it walks a student up if they're being diligent and they're being intentional. about answering the questions and thinking through the art, it walks them up to that place.
And I am still, though, thinking about the fact that this is being taught to high schoolers, and we all know high school boys, right? Yeah. High schoolers all the time. How do you walk them through even the giggles or the awkwardness?
Yeah.
Do you encounter that? Am I just around teenagers who just...
It's actually, which I think is a compliment to our school. It's rare. But I've run into it. I've run into inappropriate comments in class. I think so. In a homeschool setting where it's you're one-on-one, maybe not entirely one-on-one, but it's more face-to-face with your student. I think you have a greater control over that. In a classroom setting is where this really can be a problem. What's going on in the back row.
My goodness, yes.
Right. My mind goes in a couple of different directions with that. One is I just want to address it. It's interesting. So Paul, even when you brought up an example of female nudity, right? Which is the vast majority of nudity encountered in art, especially classical art, is male. But I feel like the question and the issue is, so often is with female nudity and it's with young men, right? It doesn't really play the other way. I've noticed, especially this year teaching this course, there's an interesting, how do I say it? Where I don't even think it's conscious, but the young ladies it's almost like they're glad to see the young men learning certain things about true beauty. And you know what I mean by that?
Sure, because they're around distortions all day long.
Yeah, exactly. And it's refreshing. So yeah.
But you're saying that like Michelangelo's David, there's that never raises a concern in anybody's head.
Yeah.
Is that? But didn't you get pushback?
It does in our world, in the homeschool world, it absolutely does. But if you go to the Louvre or the British Museum, there's more male nudity in statues and art than female nudity. But for some reason, female nudity is where our minds go when we think inappropriate. But I think that's because
boys tend to react more.
Boys are the gigglers over it. That's right. And they, I think families feel like they need to protect their daughters more than their sons from nudity. I don't know why.
Oh, I've gotten both parents of boys and girls who've asked me about nudity.
But I mean, even when I was 17 in my first year of college, and we had to, as part of our humanities class, all freshmen and sophomores, we had to watch those Kenneth Clark Civilization films. That was part of our curriculum. But we did it in an amphitheater. And so there were probably 150 freshmen in this room. And Kenneth Clark standing by the statue of David talking about David. And then he looks at him and he says, "What a man." And the entire place just erupted of 18-year-old children. And the professors just sitting there like, here we go again, every year. Yep. They knew it was coming. They knew that was going to be the reaction. And so I feel like I would have been better prepared for that if I had taken a course like yours in high school. But we do have disclaimers about it, that it does have nudity, because I couldn't talk Kyle out of it. But technically, if from my viewpoint, and you're probably in the same situation, it's just easier not to have it, because then you don't have to, I've had complaints because we put the statue of David on the front of our catalog, and it was literally from the waist up, but still it was a naked man, I guess, he didn't have a shirt on. Yeah. We've had complaints about cute little cupids and little angels, cherubs that didn't have clothing on. Because people didn't want to expose their children to that.
Well, Kyle, so what would say I come to you and I say, Kyle, I'm taking my kids to Florence on vacation. We're going to go see the museums. And even if you don't see a museum, there are a lot of statues around Florence, right? Yeah, and they don't have clothes on. But say we did get to go see David. What would you say? Okay, well, here's maybe one thing or a question or a thought that you could give in the beginning when you're at the museum with your teenagers?
Yeah.
Do you have like a back pocket kind of thing that you help people say or do to make the most of those moments that could be,
Yeah. Well, I think a good art history teacher should have many back pocket, they should know the reason why we're looking at a particular work of art.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the most important
Which
question.
has nothing really to do with the nudity. We're not looking at it because of nudity.
Okay.
We're looking at it for other reasons.
Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, I think the nudity is an intentional choice by the artist. It's not just a historical incident.
But it's also like in ancient Greece, where many of these things came from, it is an appreciation of the beauty of humanity, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what is beautiful about humanity, right? So, one thing, so just having something in your back pocket, like the giggle factor that we were talking about before, just command of the classroom, I think is the biggest, because it's going to happen. Part of it in a classroom, the positive of teaching this in a classroom is there's a little bit of peer pressure that students do feel immature at that age when they're seniors, giggling at some students, feel that pressure to not, which is good. That's a positive thing. But I think also just the command of the material, right? If a teacher knows, like, no, this is not what this is for. We're not going in that direction. So for instance, then this happened again this year, Liberty Leading the People, that painting by Delacroix, where Liberty is there. She's holding the French flag and she's striding forward. It's and she's bare chested, right? And to take it head on, like the Delacroix has shown her bare chested, which is actually fairly common going back to classical times, to show an openness and honesty, like a sincerity that this is Liberty. She's open. I think there may also be a suggestion of Liberty nurturing the people, which again, and this is that gets to why this is so important. Every time a teacher does that, right? Here's this image. This is an image of Liberty's ability, her mothering ability to nurture her people, right? And that's why she's portrayed as bare-chested in the painting. The teacher is redirecting the students, like where their mind goes when they see that image. And I think that redirection is really important because, culture, society, humor is all directing our thoughts about nudity in the human body the other way, right? So I think it's important to have that place in a class where we're saying, like, no, this is where our thoughts should go when we think about the reality, the physicality of the human body. And then also, the symbolism in art and beauty.
I think that's a helpful example. I was going to ask you to walk us through a painting. So that's how you would in a classroom, or when your class gets to that piece of art.
Yeah. It's also, Delacroix's painting is deeply influenced by the Nike Samothrace, an ancient Hellenistic sculpture. So those connections too, that like, hey, like what you're looking at, do you recognize this? You've seen this before in class. And you make that connection. Students go, oh yeah, okay, I see that Delacroix is sort of casting back to the ancient world to get some kind of an image. And then there's a whole conversation that we've had about that ancient world. Yeah, that can bring us back to your question about the David. I think the best thing to talk about with Michelangelo's David is to also talk about Donatello's David and Bernini's David, which is a thing that I do in class every single year. And I look forward to it. It's just like you put them three up on the board and you start talking about like comparing and contrasting and what each one, why are they different, and what each one says about humanity becomes the conversation. Yeah.
I have a different kind of question.
Go for it.
So your comment about nudity in art showing us what we think about the human body, what a society thinks about the human body.
Yeah. Where
does modern art and cubism that like doesn't portray a person as a person fit into that?
Yeah. So that might be a long explanation, but it in a way, modern art is obsessed with truth. Maybe it's a way to think about it that since I was about to say since Picasso, maybe even before that, since the Impressionists, modern art is taking that. So it's obsessed. When I say it's obsessed with truth, classical art, beauty is a thing that's above us. It's higher than we are, and it's a thing to be approached. the modern context, there's no such thing as beauty that is above us and outside of ourselves, right? So what you have is objective truth, like material, concrete truth. What can we know about the world through our eyes? And it gets you go down that road long enough, and it gets kind of wacky, right? Things get distorted because it turns out we can't see a whole lot with our eyes, and that's not really what we should be after in art. So my shorthand explanation for cubism, I actually do this every year with the students. I'll draw a little picture of a 3-dimensional cube on the board, and I'll say, what is that? And they say, well, it's a cube. And I say, like, well, hold on, how many sides does a cube have? And they say 6. And then I label them on the board, like 1, 2, 3. This cube has 3 sides, right? So it's not a cube, it's a representation of a cube. And folks like Picasso will come along and say, so that's not true. That's art deceiving your eye. That's art, creating an illusion of a thing that's not true. He's going to go all the way back to the ancient Greeks and say they were doing the same thing, right? They're portraying humanity as glorious and orderly and beautiful. And Picasso is going to say, we're not glorious. We're not beautiful. Like in his Guernica, his war, that famous war mural. Humanity's wretched, distorted, broken. We're just another kind of lost animal. And so he's going to say, cubism is look at this. This is art creating an illusion and deceiving us. We need to find a way to paint a cube where you can see all 6 of its sides, right? Then the art is true. Then it's authentic. So I think that's where even then portrayals of the human body get really distorted and crazy, because they're not based on some faith in order. They're based on like what can we see with our eyes?
It's almost stripping out the rationalism and relying solely on sense perception. Is that
yes?
Okay,
yeah,
interesting. Interesting. Which, if you're relying solely on sense perception, then you can never actually know the other.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that's it. It's a giant question mark. Modern art is a big, this big question mark of what can we know. I think classical art has a lot to say about this is what we know, right? And this is what we can see that sort of draws us upward and elevates humanity. Modern art is what can we know? It ends with a question. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. What have you? I know you mentioned that it's rare, but you've gotten parents who are concerned. What do you say to the concerned parents?
Yeah.
Oh, you've not gotten parents here concerned.
Yeah, I have not. I've been fortunate enough to not have to field a lot of those questions.
Well,
I know they're out there.
Because I know back in my day when I had students here, they didn't tell me anything that was going on that they thought I might not agree with, because they enjoyed it. And they didn't want it to stop. Whatever a teacher was doing, I would find out. But this is probably the case where the students are just not going home and saying, look, we're doing nudity in art. The parents probably have no clue.
Yeah. I mean, I have kids. So if that's for any, I am a parent raising 5 boys, all of whom know, I mean, to the degree that they're, my youngest is 4, so to the degree that they care, all of whom know that I teach art history, and they've seen me preparing lessons. They've seen me kind of going over my material at home. Several of them have, sort of looking over my shoulder, asked the question of, why are they always naked? Like, why aren't they wearing clothes? And I think, there it's, me personally as a parent, it's in the beginning. It's right there in Genesis that Adam and Eve are naked and unashamed. And I, as a parent, when I read that to my kids, which I feel like is a pretty important passage in scripture, this picture of humanity before the fall. And that's the one comment that we get, is this idea of nakedness. It's important to me as a parent to be able to explain what I think that is saying, which is, to me, that's part and parcel with my ability to explain why all the sculptures are naked to my kids. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an important point. I do think, though, still, we really don't have nudity anywhere else that I can think of except for this course, which is a capstone course coming out of high school. But I do think that we have to also respect each person's comfort level with it. And I feel like you deal with it more than I do because you're also teaching anatomy and physiology in the online academy. So, but I do want to make sure that that everybody does, understand that we're not saying you have to do this course if you're uncomfortable with nudity at all for your children. And I know that some people are. They just don't want their children exposed to it as children. I would say that by the time they're 17, it's time to build some, if not before, some kind of respect for art in itself. And a lot of that is going to be nude. I mean, you can't go to a museum where you're not going to be exposed to some kind of nudity. So I think building the respect for it is an important thing so that then when they go to college or out in the world, they understand going all the way back to creation, the human body and the beauty of it. But also, if you're just not ready to do that, you don't have to do this course, but you can trust everything. I mean, we are dressing cherubs for young children. I know it's but we are in classical paintings. We are not showing any nudity at all if we can help it. Something may have slipped by, but if so, we will fix it if we see, if we get complaints about it. Just people are raising their children and they have the right to raise them any way that they wish to do. And we don't have the right, to interfere with that. We're just a little piece of their lives.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good note to end on, that we hope that this is helpful to parents who we do get a lot of questions about nudity in art. So we hope this is helpful. We hope that the book is in the class and the preface and all of it is a resource to you as you introduce your students to these works and to the idea of bodies carrying great dignity.
Yeah. Yes.
And let me say one more thing that is relevant to this is the Herculean labors that are coming out. The final one is to memorize 200 pieces of art. Is that right? They do 80 in class in this particular course. So it would be 120 more. So if you take that challenge on, there will be nudity in it.
Yeah.
That's good
not
to know.
just in this course, but it will be also part of that challenge, that Herculean labor.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Well, Kyle, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so
Wonderful,
much.
thoughtful discussion. Thank you.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And thanks, Paul and Tanya, for joining too. Thank you as well. And we'll be back next time. Thanks for joining us today on Classical Etc. by Memoria Press. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, or share this episode or comment. We love to hear your questions and your comments. If you want to learn more about Memoria Press, please go to memoriapress.com. This has been Classical Etc. We're so glad you joined us, and we'll see you next time.